Welcome to the deep dive. Ready for something different?
Different good, I hope.
Oh, definitely good. Today we're going to look at some fascinating ancient perspectives, really ancient.
Sounds right up our alley.
Yeah, it is. We're diving into Leviticus chapter 15.
Leviticus, okay.
Yeah, using a commentary from My Christian Space to help us make sense of it all.
Okay.
Get ready, because we're about to uncover a whole world of beliefs surrounding ritual purity in ancient Israel, particularly around bodily discharges.
I am ready. Lay it on me.
It's a world where, get this, seemingly ordinary occurrences, like seminal emissions or even menstruation.
Woo. Right to it today.
Yeah, well, they carried profound spiritual weight.
No kidding.
And Leviticus 15, it doesn't shy away from these topics.
Nope.
Not at all. It lays out a detailed framework, very detailed, of what makes someone unclean and the steps to become ritually pure again.
This is going to be good.
It is. And one thing that jumped out, well, the commentary really emphasizes the concept of original sin.
Original sin, okay.
As the root of these purity laws. You know, it argues that even totally natural bodily functions are, well, they're viewed through the lens of that first disobedience way back when.
Huh, that is interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. It makes you wonder how much this ancient idea, how much it still resonates with us today, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. Do we see any of that left, like in how some cultures today think about the body or sexuality?
I don't know. It's worth thinking about. This commentary, it really makes you consider how much these beliefs from so long ago might have shaped, or maybe even still shape, perceptions of the body and even morality. And to go deep, the commentary dives into very specific scenarios, outlining varying degrees of uncleanliness and all the different purification rituals.
Wow.
It's a lot. What really struck me was the sheer range. Like, everything is in there, from prolonged discharges to even just spitting.
Spitting. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's right. And the text itself, it distinguishes between different types of discharges. And thankfully, the commentary explains why some were considered, like, way more unclean than others. Like, for example, say, an ongoing discharge.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe that's pointing to an infection, right?
Right.
That would require, a much longer period of purification than, well, say, a nocturnal emission.
Oh, interesting. I see. So it depends on the type of discharge, the cause, all that.
Yeah, lots of nuances.
And the rituals to become pure again are so specific, so detailed. Washing, waiting for the evening, offering doves, pigeons even.
Really? Doves and pigeons.
Yeah. Sounds pretty elaborate, right?
Definitely does.
Well, all this meticulousness, it really highlights how important ritual was in ancient Israelite culture, you know?
I can see that.
This was a society completely concerned with being holy, both as individuals and as a whole community.
It makes sense, yeah.
So these rituals weren't just about hygiene, not at all. They were about restoring a connection with God.
Ah, I see, okay.
Yeah, and it's like every little thing mattered. The commentary points out, for example, a man who is intimate with a woman during her period, he also becomes ritually unclean.
Really?
For 7 days.
Wow, okay, so it's really connected to their social structures, like gender roles and things.
Oh, absolutely.
That's so interesting.
This concept of niddah, that's the Hebrew term, for a menstruating woman's, her state of ritual impurity, it had serious social implications.
So we're not just talking about personal purity here.
It's just personal, no.
Yeah.
It's about the whole community, keeping this spiritual balance.
Right. Maintaining that equilibrium. Yeah, I get it.
The purity laws were like a guide for how they interacted, dictating behavior, setting boundaries.
Interesting.
And all to reinforce how important holiness was to them.
Makes sense. It's like a whole system built around it.
Exactly. Now, the commentary also talks about cases where a woman might bleed for longer than usual, either during her cycle or outside of it. And what surprised you is that the purification process was the same as for niddah.
Oh, so the same even though the cause is different?
Yeah, even though it's a different situation. And they even use a different Hebrew term.
Huh. That's weird.
I know. Well, the commentary suggests that, they weren't as concerned with the specific reason for the bleeding.
Okay.
It was more about this disruption, like something wasn't right in the natural order.
I see. So any deviation from that, it didn't matter if it was a man or a woman, it required certain actions.
Right. To restore that balance, to restore purity.
Wow. It's a worldview where the physical and spiritual are just completely intertwined, like every single bodily function was spiritually significant.
Exactly. We've been looking at the details of these laws, but I'm curious about the bigger picture.
Okay.
What do these practices tell us about how the ancient Israelites thought about the body, about sexuality, about their relationship with God.
Yeah, that's a big question. That goes to the heart of what Leviticus 15 is trying to tell us, really.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, we should probably unpack some key concepts first. It'll help us make sense of the deeper meaning behind everything.
Okay, yeah. Sounds like a good plan. We've laid the groundwork. Now let's go deeper into the philosophy, the theology behind all this.
Yeah.
Okay, so key concepts. Where do we begin?
Well, the commentary, it uses these words a lot, like holiness,
Yeah.
profaning the sacred,
Right.
which, to us today, they sound kind of abstract.
Yeah, a little. They definitely give you this feeling of reverence, maybe even a bit of fear.
Yeah.
But what did they really mean to the ancient Israelites,
So to them, holiness, it wasn't some vague idea.
Right.
It was like this actual state of being totally connected to God's presence. To be holy meant you were set apart, consecrated, in a right relationship with the divine.
Okay, so anything that messed with that holiness was a big deal.
Oh, yeah. Huge. That's where that profaning the sacred comes in.
Right.
It's about actions or states of being that basically violate the sanctity of God's presence. And, we've seen how even normal bodily functions, they could be seen that way.
Yeah. The commentary even says that, impure worship can lead to death.
Wow.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, it is. And while we might not take it literally today,
Yeah.
it shows how seriously they took this whole ritual purity thing.
Yeah.
They really believed that coming to God in an impure state, well, it could have terrible consequences.
Yeah.
For the individual and even for the community.
So it's like they saw impurity as this spiritual contamination,
Yeah.
something that could spread and mess up their whole relationship with God.
Exactly. And that's why those purification rituals were so important, so carefully done.
Right. It wasn't just for show.
No, they were seen as completely necessary to restore balance and protect that sacred space of the community.
These rituals, they were vital for maintaining order, a good relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the practical side of things? Did these practices also serve some kind of, hygiene purpose?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, the main focus was definitely on the spiritual side. Remember, a lot of these rituals involved washing, being isolated,
Right.
which, would have actually helped prevent disease from spreading.
So it's like a 2-for-1.
Right.
Protecting their spiritual and physical health.
Exactly. It shows how connected those two dimensions were for them.
It's amazing. We've covered so much, all these details of these purity laws and the beliefs behind them.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find really fascinating is what this tells us about humans in general,
Totally. Leviticus 15, even though it seems like it's about this very specific thing, it gives us this window into the human search for meaning, for something bigger than ourselves. It's a timeless thing.
Yeah, that's true. Even if we don't relate to the specifics of the rituals themselves, that desire to purify, to restore balance, to connect with something divine, it's like a common thread through history, through different cultures.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things we can take away from today. These ancient practices, maybe they seem weird to us now, but they remind us that the human search for meaning, for wholeness, it's universal.
And that journey, a lot of times it means asking these tough questions about purity, impurity, the connection between our body and our spirit.
Exactly. Leviticus 15, it makes us think about how these ideas have played out throughout history and how they might still affect how we understand ourselves and our place in the world today.
It's like a reminder that the body, it's not just a shell, it's a part of our spiritual lives.
Right. And that how we treat our bodies, how we see their functions, even how we purify ourselves, it can reflect our deepest beliefs and values.
The specific rituals in Leviticus 15 might seem very far from our lives today. But those core themes, purity, sanctity, searching for connection with something divine, they still resonate.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe by looking at these old traditions, we can gain some new perspective on our own beliefs, our own practices. Maybe even find inspiration for how we can cultivate a sense of the sacred in our own lives today.
Speaking of inspiration, the commentary talks about how important intention was in these rituals.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't enough to just go through the motions. You had to approach these actions with reverence, with a purpose.
That's a great point. It wasn't about blindly following rules.
Yeah.
It was about being mindful of the act itself, its spiritual meaning.
It makes me think about how we approach things in our own lives.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, a religious practice, a daily routine, even just how we do our work. Bringing that intentionality, it can change things from just being boring routines into something meaningful.
Yeah, giving them a deeper purpose, connecting them to something bigger than just ourselves.
I really appreciate how this deep dive into Leviticus 15 has gone beyond just the text itself. It's become this exploration of human nature, our search for meaning, all that.
It's been a really interesting journey looking at the layers of meaning in these practices and how they connect to the big questions that we're still asking today.
It's also been a reminder that even texts that seem outdated or irrelevant, they can still teach us something important about what it means to be human.
Yeah, they can make us rethink what we thought we knew, show us different ways of looking at things,
Okay.
and get us to really think about our own beliefs and values.
What do you think is the most important takeaway from exploring Leviticus 15?
For me, it's realizing that the human need for purity, for connection with something sacred, it's not limited to any one time or place. It's something everyone feels. It just shows up in different ways throughout history.
And that need, even if it's expressed through rituals that seem strange to us, it reflects a basic human need to understand where we fit in, to find meaning in what we experience.
Right. It's about looking for wholeness, balance, a sense of being in the right relationship with ourselves, with others, and with something bigger.
I like that. It's not about following a set of rules perfectly. It's about finding the practices and beliefs that help us find that sense of the sacred in our own lives.
And that journey, it can be something personal, but it's also something everyone can relate to.
Leviticus 15, it might not be the first thing you think of when you think about spirituality or the human experience. But, like we've seen today, it gives us this unique view on these timeless ideas.
Yeah, it reminds us that we can find wisdom and insight in unexpected places, and that even really old texts can still speak to us today.
This has been a really enriching deep dive. Thank you so much for guiding us through this material.
It was my pleasure. I always enjoy digging into these ancient texts and seeing what we can learn from them.
And to our listeners, we hope you found this as thought-provoking as we have. It's a good reminder that understanding ourselves and where we fit in the world is a journey.
And sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the most amazing discoveries.
Wow. As we wrap up, I'm just struck by how deep and complex these ancient beliefs really were.
I know, right? It's amazing, like a simple set of rules about what bodily purity, it opens up this whole world of social stuff, spiritual stuff, even philosophical ideas.
It's like we've been peeling back these layers, seeing not just what they did, but why they did it.
And what we find is, well, this worldview where the body and spirit were totally inseparable, every bodily function had meaning, it was symbolic, and keeping everything ritually pure, that was key for the whole community.
It really makes you realize that what might seem totally strange to us today, for them, it was deeply meaningful.
It's a good reminder that we need to step back from our modern ideas and try to appreciate just how different human experience can be, how differently people express their spirituality.
You know, so much of what we've talked about today is about this idea of restoring balance, fixing what's been messed up. Do you think there are any modern-day versions of these purification rituals?
That's a good question. I mean, we may not have the exact same rituals anymore.
Right.
But that basic impulse to cleanse, to renew, to kind of start fresh, that's something we see everywhere throughout history.
Yeah, it's like that universal desire for a clean slate, a way to get back to a state of wholeness.
Exactly. Think about all the ways we mark transitions in our lives, whether it's through rituals, symbolic actions, or even just trying to make amends for something. These practices, even if they're not religious, they often reflect that same ancient desire, you know?
To restore balance, to move forward.
Yeah, to get a fresh start. It's amazing how we can find these echoes of the past in what we do today, even if we don't realize it.
It just shows you the power of ritual and symbols, how they shape how we understand ourselves in the world. So as we wrap up, any final thoughts, any big questions you want to leave our listeners with?
You know, I think the most important takeaway here is remembering that Leviticus 15, like all these ancient texts, they're not rule books.
Right.
They're conversation starters.
Okay.
They get us thinking about a different way of seeing things, challenging what we thought we knew, and helping us understand what it means to be human in a deeper way.
I like that.
And maybe by exploring these old perspectives, we can better understand our own beliefs and practices. Maybe even discover some new insights into that age-old search for meaning, for connection, for wholeness.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. Thank you for walking us through this. It's been fascinating, challenging, and definitely thought-provoking.
The pleasure was all mine, really.
And to our listeners, we hope this exploration of Leviticus 15 has sparked your curiosity and given you some new ideas to chew on. Remember, learning and discovery, they never really end. Keep searching, keep questioning, keep diving deep.